are we okay to get started? I'll just do a quick introduction while we let people roll in, but just to make sure that we use the time wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So Celine speaking here. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. This is our third meeting in the Meet the Expert series. And we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the shared traditional territories of the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live and learn on this traditional territory. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is For Our Kids hosting. We're a national network of parents and grandparents in Canada fighting for a better world for our kids and grandkids. And we are almost entirely run by volunteers. All the folks you have here hosting are volunteers, and each local chapter is self-organized. So we're a little group currently consists of myself as well as Marianne, Lorna, and Josh. So we are small, we're only a few months old, but we are mighty and growing. And we would love to have more parents joining us to help with our advocacy and public education. We'll share some opportunities for doing that at the end of the session. But on that, I also wanted to do a shout out for Jill, Julia, and Eleanor, who are just joining us as well, bringing their support. So small but growing. And here in North Vancouver, we decided to set up a speaker series. This is to go alongside our monthly meeting. And we really wanted to do our bit to help the planet. And following the presentation tonight, we'll open it up for Q&A. We will be keeping an eye on the chat for your questions, or if you're feeling up for it, you can also ask your questions. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Sandi, Goldie, and Jim Bronson, who are here tonight to talk about Project Drawdown and how we can reverse global warming. Big topic. We are very excited and very grateful to have Sandi and Jim here tonight as passionate advocates and an example of how grandparents can help bring about positive change in their retirement years. With that, welcome Sandi and Jim, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Celine, and good evening. And thank you all for the invitation to this meeting. We want to acknowledge the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh, as we meet on their unceded lands and honor their stewardship over many generations.
And we'd like to acknowledge our sources this evening. First, the book Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Quite an audacious title. It's edited by Paul Hawken, and it was Environmental Book of the Year in 2017. This book summarizes the findings of over 200 environmental scientists and researchers. Our second source is the Pachamama Alliance, which is a San Francisco-based nonprofit which developed the original classes to spread the ideas in Drawdown, and Jim and I have modified them ever since. The Drawdown Review 2020 is our third source. Project Drawdown is continually updating their research on climate solutions. And in 2020, they published their most recent findings. And this book is published only online, and you can find it at drawdown.org.
Okay, so just a short disclaimer. Sandi and I are not experts in climate change or in the Drawdown Research Project, but we're happy to for what we've learned, and we welcome questions and comments after our presentation. So just checking with Josh. I think, Josh, you're looking at the first slide. Now let's go to the second.
Okay, so probably like many of you, I've read a lot of alarming books and articles about climate change. And then 3 years ago, I was visiting Jim at his home in Ashland, Oregon. And I saw a poster for a class that advertised this book Drawdown, and it said, "We can reverse global warming." I said to Jim, "I'm there." So that evening, I was part of a group of about 80 people. And I watched in that room, I watched despair turn into grounded optimism in about 2 hours, just from what we learned that night. So right after the session, I walked up to one of the presenters at the front and I said, would you come to Vancouver, BC and help me bring Drawdown to BC? And she said, I love Vancouver. So the rest is history for ever since. Jim and I have been presenting intros to Drawdown and then 5-session getting into action classes in the Vancouver area. And we've been training new presenters who are spreading the hopeful solutions around the province.
Okay, Josh.
So to become fully present and just prepare for tonight's program, let's just take a moment to take a few deep breaths and think about this question. Thank you. It's easy to feel pretty discouraged about the environmental news these days, but Drawdown presents a completely new way of thinking that can help us feel quite differently.
Josh? Okay, major changes can seem to take forever, or they can happen very quickly. Look at the picture on the left taken in 1900. Can you spot the car? Now, look at the picture on the right, taken on the same day of the year and the same location, but in 1913. Can you spot the horse? Slide. Here's a graph showing change in atmospheric CO2 concentration. It goes up and down every year due to the remarkable process of photosynthesis. The problem is that it doesn't go down as much as it rises. So it's been steadily going up since 1955. It's now higher than it's been in the last 3 million years.
So here is Paul Hawken's definition of drawdown. The point in time when we begin to take more greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere than we are adding. It's when we bend the curve. That's the starting point for real progress.
Okay, now we're looking at the drawdown solutions. The review divides solutions into 3 main categories. The first is reducing sources, bringing emissions to zero. Let's take a look at some of the many ways to do that. One is switching our power sources from fossil fuels to renewables that produce little or no greenhouse gases, such as wind and solar. Now we're looking at reducing food waste, which is one of the most effective solutions to reduce sources of greenhouse gases and get to drawdown. According to the Globe and Mail article in January 17th of 2019, more than half of our food in Canada ends up in a landfill, where it produces methane, a greenhouse gas 75 times more damaging than CO2. This is an example of a solution that can be implemented in our homes and in our community. Reducing food waste worldwide can save an astonishing 70.5 gigatons of CO2 equivalent by 2050. For comparison, the entire world emits about 36 gigatons in a year. Reducing food waste is one of the solutions to reduce sources of greenhouse gases and get to drawdown. Okay.
Yeah, and another way to reduce sources of greenhouse gases as an individual or as a family is to eat a plant-rich diet, eliminating the methane cattle produce. If 50% of the world's population restricts their diet to a healthy 2,500 calories per day and reduces meat consumption overall, Drawdown estimates over 25 gigatons of emissions could be avoided from dietary change alone. And if we don't destroy the forest to raise food for animals, an additional 40 gigatons of emissions could be avoided, making healthy plant-rich diets one of the most impactful solutions at a total of 66 gigatons reduced. This brings us to our third category, uplifting natural, that's our second category. The first one was eliminating emissions. And the second category is uplifting natural sinks. So supporting sinks. So far, we've looked at solutions that directly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now let's think about supporting natural sinks that sequester emissions. Mature forests are one of the most effective ways to bring carbon compounds out of the atmosphere and bind them into plants and especially into soils. Another huge natural sink is the oceans, perhaps the greatest ally we have in mitigating global warming. Here, mangrove forests are being restored along ocean shallows. Oceans have absorbed at least 90% of the excess heat generated by recent climate change, and since the 1980s have taken up to 20 to 30% of human-created carbon dioxide. The oceans have a great potential in getting us to drawdown.
Improving society is Project Drawdown's third major category of solutions for global warming. The peer-reviewed science tells us that expanding opportunities for girls and women is among the most effective ways over the long term that we can bring our world back into a healthy balance.
And family planning programs increase survival of babies. And when this happens, studies show that parents choose to have smaller, healthier, more prosperous families. As we consider the future of climate solutions, it matters how many people will be eating, moving, plugging in, building, buying, using, wasting, and all the rest. People's choices about how many children to have should be theirs and theirs alone. And those children should inherit a livable planet. Access to high quality, inclusive education is a fundamental human right and a cornerstone of gender equity. When levels of education rise, in particular for girls and young women, access to reproductive health care improves and women's political, social, and economic empowerment expand, securing gender equity and advancing human well-being. Now, here in Canada, girls routinely receive an education at least up through grade 12, but this is not the case in much of the rest of the world, as we know. And you might wonder how you could help alleviate that situation besides financially supporting organizations which encourage girls' education around the world, like Malala's charity. We have participants who've been in our drawdown classes who have researched that and have discovered that if they get involved in projects sewing sanitary pads for young girls around the world, then they can go to school for the entire month every month rather than 3 weeks out of the month. And that just makes a huge difference. In North Vancouver, in our very first drawdown class, we had a young woman who was sewing pads and sending them to Nepal, and girls are thrilled to have them, as you can see in this picture. This is just one of the many charities that work on that.
The Drawdown Review puts forward 10 key insights about how we can get our world and its natural processes back into balance.
The first is we can reach drawdown at least by mid-century if we scale the climate solutions already in hand.
Second, climate solutions are interconnected as a system, and we need all of them.
And beyond addressing greenhouse gases, climate solutions can have co-benefits that contribute to a better, more equitable world.
The financial case in favor of climate solutions is crystal clear, as savings significantly outweigh costs. And here you see the example of regenerative agriculture in the picture. And at the bottom, you can see that the net cost between now and 2050 is expected to be $57 billion roughly. And the net savings is $1.9 trillion. So this is an example of how we should do this, whether or not it's helped us solve the climate crisis.
And the fifth major idea was the majority of climate solutions reduce or replace the use of fossil fuels. We must accelerate these solutions while actively stopping the use of coal, oil, and gas. And we can be really proud in Vancouver that Harbour Air has the first commercial route flown by an electric aircraft.
We cannot reach drawdown without simultaneously reducing emissions towards zero and supporting nature's carbon sinks. So here you see the example of tropical rainforests.
7, some of the most powerful climate solutions receive comparably little attention, reminding us to widen our lens.
And the 8th is accelerators are critical to move solutions forward at the scale, speed, and scope required. So in this example, here electric cars are benefiting from charging stations. Municipalities, states, provinces, national governments all should be supporting the building of charging stations.
And number 5, footholds of agency exist at every level for all individuals and institutions to participate in advancing climate solutions. In other words, there are ways to implement all the solutions as an individual, in the community, and at a national government level.
That was actually number 9.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And here's 10. Immense commitment, collaboration, and ingenuity will be necessary to depart the perilous path we are on and to realize the path that's possible.
Yeah, all of these 80 solutions are important and needed, and you can read details about all these solutions on drawdown.org, and there's more information about them in the book, Drawdown. In North Vancouver, City Library has purchased 12 copies of the book Drawdown, so you can check a copy out there. And 32 Books in Edgemont Village has been very supportive by always carrying a good supply of the books if you want to own one.
So here's a cartoon. This participant in a training program on sustainability says, what if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? Most of the drawdown solutions have cascading benefits to society, so we would want to do them, even if they didn't have a climate emergency facing us.
Last week, Jim and I had the pleasure of attending Drawdown's second annual conference online. And I met in a small group, I met the author of this workbook, and we immediately ordered copies for our grandchildren. It can be used as a fun resource for families. And there's also a whole school curriculum with supporting materials. We'll put a link in the chat in case you're interested in ordering this book and sharing it perhaps with your elementary children's schools. And Rafi has become a wonderful environmental educator, writing great songs with powerful themes. He's supporting the Fridays for the Future rallies with his music. When I was a kindergarten teacher for many years, I remember singing Rafi's song, Help Save the Amazon, the Lungs of the Earth, with my kinders. One day, one of them came out and said, I figured out how we could save the rainforest. And I said, Matt, that's awesome. Tell me. And he said, well, this weekend, I just went to my family and my neighbors and I said, would you give me some money to save the rainforest? And he opened up his little fist and said, look what I got, and showed me a handful of coins. So I said, that's wonderful. Would you tell the other kids? So he told the other kids about it. And we started into fundraisers and sold environmental themed t-shirts. And they ended up buying, I think we bought 10 acres of rainforest through Nature Conservancy. And it's interesting to, as a little follow-up to that, I got an email about 2 years ago from one of the parents of one of those kindergartners. And she said, I wanted to thank you for being Kai's kindergarten teacher. And I want you to know that he's in the latest Forbes magazine as one of the 30 under 30, one of the 30 entrepreneurs to watch. He had developed a new way of attaching solar panels to roofs and had a thriving business in California. So never doubt that your support for your children's ideas for healing the planet can do a lot. And as a follow-up to that, if you ever need a lift and you get discouraged about environmental issues, go to this website, Young Voices for the Planet. It's an awesome website that has short videos of what kids have accomplished with the support of their parents. And we're going to look at a little clip from one of those videos just to give you an idea of what they're like. We'll look at a young environmentalist named Alec Lures.
My name is Alec Lures. I am 13 years old, I'm in 8th grade, and I go to Ventura Charter School. I never knew about climate change at all until I saw Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth. Kids are the ones who will be most affected by global warming. By the time we're middle-aged, climate change will be a huge crisis if nothing is done today to help us. I went ahead and I made my own presentation, and I made mine especially for kids, and I incorporated videos and animation and hands-on demonstrations so that kids would be excited about it. I have the website kidsversusglobalwarming.com.
The passion has been Alex, and he kept coming up with ideas. Like one night he designed all of these I Matter logos. Mom, look what I did at 2 in the morning.
Here's our first 20-second video. I also came up with an idea to alert my city, Ventura, about the dangers of sea level rise and how it will affect us. The project is called SLAP. SLAP stands for Sea Level Awareness Project. Because of global warming, polar ice caps are melting, causing the sea level to rise. And if Greenland completely melted, which could happen in the next century, sea level would rise over 20 feet worldwide. And this would be Ventura. So here's what we'll be doing. We're going to be putting up over 100 poles throughout the city warning of this potential sea level rise. On the pole, there's the I Matter campaign, and then there's also 5 or 6 images that show what we can do about it.
In the Drawdown Getting Into Action classes, participants are empowered to choose solutions to research and to find ways that they can make a difference. Eleanor Gill is a North Vancouver parent, and she was a participant in one of our classes, and she has done a variety of things for the planet since then. We'd like to ask her to share with you her latest project, what she has learned about the critical processes of managing refrigerants, one of the very most important solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions going into the future. Eleanor, over to you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for this chance to say a few words. I took Jim and Sandi's Drawdown course in the spring during full lockdown. And I have to say, it was the first time I could take it because it was online. I couldn't before leave the house to go to attend the course in person. So it was great. I was really interested that refrigerants was in the 2017 Drawdown book listed as the #1 climate change solution. And I didn't know anything about refrigerants. And so it's prompted a research, process. And I had a chat yesterday with the folks for our kids, and I've been talking to other organizations too. We have some initial ideas for a campaign, and I can briefly describe that, but I really encourage anyone else who wants to learn more about refrigerants to reach out, because we're very much needing support and different ideas. But here's some basic information about how big of a deal refrigerants are. Refrigerants are everywhere. They're in your home. They're in every supermarket, in particular, the whole cold chain, warehousing, distribution systems. And they're very potent global warming potential gases. So that's, to show you, one tank of refrigerant is similar to cars, 14 cars for a year. So I also hadn't realized that refrigerants leak. In commercial systems, roughly 25% of refrigerants leak every year. So as much as we're moving towards a phase down of the worst refrigerants in Canada, the leak is a major issue still. So if you can go to the next slide. So we've identified one action that we hope to take this year, and we're still crafting the strategy for exactly what change this could bring about. It's piggybacking on a campaign in the US that is pressuring supermarkets to accelerate their retrofit programs to adopt lower global warming potential refrigerants, which is essentially CO2. And by essentially mapping out and asking families to get involved when they shop at their local store to check, it's very easy to check when you reach for your milk and your eggs what refrigerant your store is using, to map it out, and based on that data to start pressure campaigns for some of the big chains that are not moving as fast as others, and to also provide feedback to chains that citizens and shoppers are very much focusing on refrigerants and aware of their retrofit progress. Here in Canada, we're starting our research now on understanding, Loblaws and Sobeys seem to be leading the way with their retrofit programs. Metro, so we're trying to figure out the laggards that could perhaps respond to some increased transparency and spotlight on this issue. And so we're lucky in some ways that most of our big chain supermarkets roll up to 4 organizations. It's not nearly as complex as it is in the US. And this just gives a map of this kind of crowdsourced data that this a US organization called Environment Investigative Agency, they have a campaign, and they're very happy to bring it to Canada if we can find lots of interested folks to support, essentially filling out this map and mapping out all of our stores as much as we can, to then use that as a feedback loop back to stores to say, no, folks actually are focused on refrigerants as an important issue, and we would like more information from you about your retrofit progress and plans for the future. So I'm not sure that gives a very brief overview, but it's just an example of a very technical topic that I knew nothing about, but thanks to Jim and Sandy's course, was empowered and motivated to learn more about what's going on in my area. And now I'm trying to link up with others who are interested in helping launch a campaign on this.
Okay, thanks, Eleanor. That was fabulous.
Yeah, she's our poster child tonight. Okay, so we'd like to suggest some ways that you and your family can support solutions to climate change. First, you could sign up at BC Drawdown for our newsletters, and also sign up with Force of Nature. I think Marion can tell you how to get their alerts, and we'll talk more about that. Join Getting Into Action classes. There is a whole series of classes being offered Thursday mornings in February, and then one Saturday in March from 9:30 to 11. I think Joan Gillies may be on the call tonight, who's actually the facilitator of that class, and she lives in Comox. So anyway, we'll put in the chat how you could get that. You can also just go to BC Drawdown, to our website, bcdrawdown.org, and get the contact information for that. But if you get on the mailing list for the North Shore Force of Nature, they will alert you to when you could write a letter to the local council, West Van, North Van, City of North Van, And those letters, especially when they come from people they don't get letters from all the time, they're so effective. And then you're not just impacting just your family, but you're supporting them and making policies that impact the whole community hugely.
Okay, a little bit more. Move your family toward a plant-rich diet. Sandi and I have done it, and it's great. And it works big time for the planet. Make a game of eliminating single-use plastics. You can refill dish soap and other cleaning products at Nourish in Lynn Valley and Delish General Store in Edgemont Village. Delish also has a wonderful shampoo and conditioner bars. And you can add to the Canadian database about refrigerants used in supermarkets. You can ask your friends across Canada to help out.
So it's a beautiful world here in beautiful BC. And we'd like you to hear from Guy Dauncey from Vancouver Island. He was writing about solutions to global warming 10 years ago. We sometimes call him the Canadian Paul Hawken. Guy's an ecofuturist who works to develop a positive vision of a sustainable future and to translate that vision into action. He's founder of the BC Sustainable Energy Association and co-founder of the Victoria Car Share Cooperative. So we're going to listen to him speaking at the 2010 Vancouver TEDx event, and it's really relevant today.
So Paul Hawken, in a recent speech to a university student, said, "You are brilliant and the earth is hiring. We need all of you. This is your chance, whether you're in Helsinki or Shanghai or Mumbai or London or here in Vancouver. We need every one of us to step up to these challenges, because if we don't succeed in this stuff, we're going down the tubes." Now, the last time we had a crisis of this stage was World War II, when, as I said earlier, the Nazis occupied all of Europe. Now, we didn't try to motivate the troops at that point by saying, "Go out and kill a Nazi." Vera Lynn sang to them in a motivational song of love. And she sang, "There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after. Tomorrow, when the world is free." We need new words for a new century. There'll be solar rooftops and lush organic gardens. Tomorrow, just you wait and see. There'll be bike bells ringing and nature singing. Tomorrow, when the world is green. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Guy Dauncey. To find out more and get our newsletter updates on drawdown classes in BC, you can go to our homepage at bcdrawdown.org. Our newsletters just come out once or twice a month with news of what's going on in BC. So here's a picture which you'll see on our website.
And if you know of a group that would like to host an introduction to Drawdown or host a 5-session Getting into Action class, which of course is online now anyway, or if you'd like to become a presenter yourself, please let us know. Josh has all our contact information.
Okay, and Josh, who has been advancing the slides and videos for us, we're going to stop here with this slide and not go to the last one so that we can have some time for Q&A. So let's go back to our
gallery view.
Gallery view, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim and Sandi. And I'm going to jump in now and help with some questions. So probably the best thing for everybody, if you want to go back to your gallery view and see as many people as you can. And I'll take questions in the chat. And if anybody wants to talk to Jim and Sandi, just give me a wave or put something in the chat where I can see you.
Okay.
Move that there.
And Josh can screen share.
Yes, we probably don't need the screen share.
No.
This is our favorite song. What a wonderful world. It's so beautiful, but we're skipping it tonight.
Oh, sorry, I jumped in too
It's a
soon.
wonderful world of faces on our screen.
There we go. So yeah, that's great. I think, I mean, I'll give everyone a chance to sort of have a think and if any questions they've got, but I guess just to get us started, it was really lovely actually seeing Eleanor's follow-up and seeing how quickly like Drawdown can bring you to a certain issue. I was just wondering if there been any other sort of success stories like that where you've seen other campaigns come out of allowing people to see the bigger picture or allowing people to, you know, to see, oh, that's something that I can really focus on.
Yeah, there have been so many. I mean, every class, we're so inspired. Actually, we're having a lot of fun now. We are doing something called the Saturday Solutions Synergy Sessions. Every 2 months, we have a 2-hour session on a Saturday morning. And people who have done the Drawdown classes in particular come and they just share ideas. I mean, honestly, we do very little prep for that, except just kind of outline an agenda. And we put people in breakouts and they share ideas, and it's just people talking about what they're doing. So I think from our very first class, we had 3 different people put solar panels on their roof after that. I see David Hunter on the screen, and he's one who's got new solar panels on his roof. Yeah, so I probably said that the American way. It's probably roof. I never remember which one it is. I have dual citizenship and dual language. But yeah, gee, Jim, what other things? So many people have gotten involved in tree planting in various and restoring natural areas that have, you know, that need to be restored. What else?
Well, certainly getting in touch with city councils about step codes. And step codes are a big deal. If we can move up the step codes and advance the state of the art of building, we can get to net zero buildings way before we thought we were going to. And buildings are one of the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, both in actually building the building and in running the building. So if we can get to net zero buildings, that's a big leap ahead. And one of our participants took that on and actually got involved with the city council and did help advance the state of the step codes.
And several of the people who have been in our classes are getting involved with something called the Climate Caucus now. Eleanor is one of them, and I'm one of them. And the Climate Caucus is an organization of municipal leaders across Canada. And anyone can join the Climate Caucus, although the actual councillors and mayors are the only ones who can go to some of the Climate Caucus meetings. Once a month, there's a meeting just for them, and once a month, there's a meeting we all can go to. But then we can go to working groups. So there's a zero waste working group. There's a nature solutions working group. There's a buildings working group. And you can attend those, and they do fabulous webinars, so you learn things. But also, we have a working group that's trying to build the Climate Caucus and get more councillors across Canada signed up, because getting things passed, getting policies passed that are that reduce emissions at a municipal level, you can just imagine how much more effective that is than going to a plant-based diet. Jim and I are doing our part with a plant-based diet in our home, but that's a small impact. And your impact goes up the more you're out in the community. And so I spoke at the council, and honestly, I thought, oh no, I can't speak. I won't know what I'm talking about. I'll be too nervous, la, la, la. And I spoke anyway, because I had to. I just, for the same reason you're here tonight, we have to do this. And I wrote letters to 2 different council meetings, and I know Marianne has done the same thing. She spoke the same night I did. And there's a policy now in District of North Van, as there is in the city and in West Van and in Vancouver, that new buildings are not to be built with gas. They need to be built with electricity and heat pumps. So, I mean, we're getting
What's happening? We're getting there, yeah, and we're having lots of good chat coming in. There's a couple of questions I think I might just direct towards you all. So question for Jim about the plant-based diet that you mentioned, and someone asking about whether grass-fed meat and versus plant-based diet, and whether there's any kind of what the carbon discrepancies on that is. And then also a question, if Eleanor, you're happy to take one afterwards, about refrigerants and if there's been anything done by the federal government. So I'll leave you for that to think about. But Jim, yeah, it's kind of, some people, you know, are saying, well, we don't want to give up meat completely. So is there a big difference with grass-fed meat?
Well, actually, you know, there is. The problem is that for every calorie that's raised, when we feed it to animals and then we eat the animals, we get a huge reduction. And so the plant-based diet kind of eliminates that step down in efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't devote prairie land to raising cattle, but instead raise things that we can eat that are plant-based, it can be much more efficient. And one of the reasons that we're in that kind of a condition is that we've really taken many old growth forests and forests of all kinds and taken them away and replaced them with raising grain for cattle. And so it's about 1 in 100 efficiency if you do that. So it really does make a difference if you're willing to be plant-based. There's a lot of new things on the market, and Sandi and I have discovered many of these, call them pseudo-meat plant-based materials are pretty darn good. We look forward to them.
But you know, you can start small. You can say, let's have a meatless Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Can I comment on that?
I haven't given up cheese yet. I haven't given up ice cream, you know, so.
Yeah, sorry, go on, jump in. Alex, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, I think you missed the point. Grass-fed beef. We've been buying our meat from a guy in Horsefly for 30 years. He doesn't cut down trees. You can't grow much else up there in the north. And it's grass-fed. It has vitamin K2. It's really good for you. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give it up. I agree with you. I wouldn't buy industrial meat. And I think that's a really, you know, your answer is correct, but I think the alternative, there is an alternative.
Right. For
industrial agriculture.
Find alternatives. I salute you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the challenge, Alex, is getting that to scale, right? Like, it's great that you have that option, but it's not an option for the 7 billion people in this world.
Well, it's called regenerative agriculture. The manure from the animals goes right onto the ground, and it regenerates the grass, and then they eat the grass. You can't beat that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the comments. I'm going to jump over to Eleanor now, if that's all right with you, Eleanor, just to come back on that question about whether there's anything being done by the government about this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny, when I first looked into refrigerants in the course, I concluded after a day of research that we were totally fine in Canada, because Canada has signed on to an international treaty, the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, which requires a phase down and has aggressive targets. And there's legislation in place in Canada to promote and to support that phase down. But it was only upon further investigation, and I got sort of the tips around the leaks. And then I've been doing a lot more research to think, oh, there actually is there are some gray areas where maybe some community action could be interesting. I'll also say that another action that's very easy for all of us in BC is disposal. So when you dispose of your household fridge or freezer, if they are at end of life, or if you are moving homes or whatever, to make sure that you take it to the transfer station here on the North Shore. Pretty much the 97% of the BC population has access, I think, within a few kilometers, or within 50 kilometers of a transfer station that has a certified process to destruct refrigerants, which is great. I don't know what the state of play is across Canada, so that's another interesting area. Could there be opportunities to expand these types of destruction protocols across Canada? So there's definitely a big framework in place. In some ways, the industry is under massive change because of regulation, but there seems to be limited enforcement action, almost no inspection of whether users of refrigerants are following regulations. And the leakage issue means that we should be moving faster than, we should be moving as fast as possible. There you go. It's very complicated. I have a lot more information if anyone wants to geek out on refrigerants.
Yeah, no, that's great. And if anybody does, then either reach out to Eleanor or come through us and we'll put you in touch, because I think this is something we're going to be looking at going forward as well. Okay, thanks, Eleanor, for picking that up. So really good chat going on. Everybody's answering each other's questions, but there's one up here I just want to direct to Jim and Sandi about the whether there's been any review about non-natural engineered carbon sequestering, so the kind of engineered sinks, which I read recently, like some people were saying to meet our carbon budgets will be impossible without engineered sinks, which I was a bit surprised by, but I just wondered if you'd had any thoughts on that, where you think Canada's looking at that at the moment?
Just a little bit that I know, in BC, we have a company that has a carbon capture technology where they take carbon dioxide out of the air and they actually, I think they make, fuel. And so it's a way of minimizing the amount of CO2 that's caused by, say, airplane fuel. And so I can't remember the name of that company, but I know it's in BC.
I think it's in Squamish.
In Squamish. And I think that they're in the trial phase right now. And again, just as you said, Lorna, it's the scaling up issue that's really the question. We'll have to see how they might be able to scale this up. But yeah, hopefully that will be one of the mix of 100 solutions that can lead us to Drawdown.
I saw a great little video once on plants that they were modifying so that they developed this enormous root system, just a little plant with these huge roots that sequestered so much carbon. So in a sense, that's another engineered one.
Yeah. And I think, just to sort of start wrapping us up here, so you had sources, sinks, and solutions as the three kind of big categories. So the solutions area was really interesting, sort of getting into the social side. Is there any stories around that that's happening locally or in Canada?
Yeah, and that it's reducing emissions, sinks, and they call it improving society.
Okay.
And there's solutions in all three of them. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, the educating girls. I guess my comment on that would be the idea of getting girls educated and combining that with letting, having family planning available. There's something called period poverty. And this is something that anybody could dive into and research. And I know my daughter was the one, she lives in the States, and she was the one who said, Mom, period poverty is an issue in the States. It's not just in third world countries. And I'm sure it's an issue places in Canada where girls cannot afford all the sanitary supplies. In BC, I know we are very fortunate that in schools, there are sanitary supplies available for girls. In Nepal, for example, not only are the supplies not available, they are expensive. The girls can't afford them. And when they don't go to school 1 week out of the month, and there's such a social stigma I mean, they're often put off in a little hut for a week, you know, to not be associated with it. And it's a serious issue. And of course, they end up dropping out of school early and marrying early or becoming pregnant, and, you know, so yeah, there are many individuals who are working on projects like making reusable pads. And actually the Rotary Club in West Vancouver did an amazing project where they got pads to girls in Uganda. Yeah.
Rural Uganda.
Yeah.
At Rotary, I don't know if anybody else on the screen is excited about Rotary, but I am, because worldwide there's 1.2 million Rotarians. They have a project budget of over $2 billion a year, and they have just adopted the environment as one of their main areas of interest. So we're going to see Rotarians and Rotary projects really ramping up. And one of them that they have historically supported is with women and girls, empowering them and helping them with their education.
And the Rotary has been focusing on eliminating polio in the world for many, many years. And they are just about done with that. And I am just visualizing all this money going from that health education and health providing system into the environment. So
directed.
Bringing out projects that Rotary could do and proposing them to local Rotarians is a great path.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, thank you so much. There's been really good chat as well, so we'll capture all of that and pass it on to you. I guess just to finish off before I pass over to Marion, I mean, I've heard of Project Drawdown so many times, and it's become such a big brand and a project in itself. It'd just be useful for you to explain to everyone, like, how does the community work, and like, how does all the leader levels, and like, how do you get engaged? Because it sounds like it's a big program within itself.
It's so darn grassroots.
Is it?
I mean, BC Drawdown is just about here what you see. I mean, Dave is involved in it. They're probably, when we have a Drawdown conveners meeting for BC, we have maybe 6 to 8 to 10 people, but we're educating people like crazy. And when we send out our invitations to the Saturday Solutions, we're sending how many? We have how many?
300 about.
300 people on the blind copy list. So we've been educating a lot of people, and then they don't all show up for a Saturday Solutions, but you'll have 30 to 50 may show up, and they're all excited about what they're doing, and it's thrilling to be there.
Yeah, it's an interesting organization internationally. It's based in the Bay Area. There's not a lot of staff actually working for Drawdown, but they have been able to mobilize over 200 collaborative research scientists around the world. And so it's kind of like an idea whose time has come, and people show up. And so without being a massive organization itself, it has a wide net that it casts, particularly about doing research on drawdown solutions. And implementing these solutions, of course, isn't their purpose. They are the research arm that looks at how these solutions can be aggregated together to get us out of global warming problems. But implementing each solution is up to us individually and whoever is working on it. So it's kind of like they're a guiding light, a North Star that can lead us to what are successful solutions, but we've got to do it.
Yeah, well, they're definitely having a lot of impact. So thank you so much for your time and for educating us on that. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone else for all your questions. And I'm going to pass over to Marion now just to wrap up with the For Our Kids.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandi and Jim. That was awesome. That was a nice intro into Drawdown. There's much more to learn, so it's great that you also posted how you can learn more. Thank you so much. And grassroots, yeah, that's us too. It's all grassroots, right? But it's growing grassroots. That's the good news. So before everyone logs off, I quickly want to do a few announcements. First of all, on the next campaign, we're gonna target the banks. You may have heard of Bank Switch. So you may also have heard that the Canadian top five banks are heavily investing in fossil fuels and supercharging the climate crisis. So on January 29th, for kids across the nation, in collaboration with Bank Switch, is going to tell the banks that we want them to change their practices, or otherwise we will change banks. Well, don't worry, we won't tell them on the spot we're changing banks. I know that's a bit more complicated than just showing up and telling them you got to clean up your act, but we're just basically going to tell them. And if more people do that, the more impact it will have. So we will include this action in our follow-up email to you if you're interested, if you already have been considering looking into your bank's commitments to sustainability. This might be a good time to do it. Also, I want to let you know about our next monthly meeting. It's going to be on February 16th, and we're going to be chatting with Jennifer Johnson about renewable energy in BC, so high level. And wanted to let you know that if you want to be informed about our events or if you want to get involved, please go to our website for North Shore for Our Kids webpage and tell us you are interested. Give us a little bit more information. And we will get in touch with you because we need more parents to join us. Basically, we've said it before, climate action is the 21st parenting skill. And we welcome you. There's lots of things you can get involved with, as much and as little as you like to. So wanted to again thank everyone for being here, and Sandi and Jim for being inspirational. And together with us looking after our kids, hopefully we'll get more people excited to join in whatever capacity works for them, right? But that is 8:59, and I think that's a beautiful time for us to say goodbye and hope to see you on February 16th. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And thanks to Josh for managing the slides. That's great.
And to Eleanor.
And Eleanor for being our back. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Marianne.